بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing in our reading and explanation of the book Kitab At-Tawheed of Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul rahimahullah, alongside the explanation of Ibn al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah. We stopped last week on the subject of sihr, magic and sorcery, and what does it mean, what are its types, what is its ruling. And today we're going to take a look at the next chapter where Shaykh rahimahullah will explain some types of magic, explaining some forms of sihr. So this chapter he's going to go into more detail as to what forms of magic there are. We said last week some of the examples the Shaykh mentioned. For example, we have magic which is done through the aid of magicians, and that is disbelief. This is the one that many of us today, when we talk about magic, we're referring to, that black magic, biwasit al-shayateen, by way of shayateen. And then there is the other type of magic which is not necessarily using any of the shayateen or their aid, but just tricks, khifatul haraka or khifatul yad, sleight of hand, card tricks, stuff like this. It's haram. But it's not the magic which takes someone out of the fold of Islam. Today the Shaykh is going to get into more details regarding these types. Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen, he says rahimahullah, he's saying in chapter some forms of sihr, that is explaining the realities of these things and their rulings. And as we mentioned earlier, that sihr is of two types. One which is unbelief or disbelief, and one that is wrongdoing. So the first category is the one where the sihr which is using the shayateen as aid. This is disbelief. The second type is the one which is wrongdoing. It's udwan, transgression, and dhulm. But it's not necessarily disbelief. The Shaykh says here, anwa' is a plural of the word naw', which just means a type or category, a sort, jins. And we said last week, linguistically, sihr is whatever is subtle and hidden in its cause. Sihr is whatever is hidden and subtle in its causes. Ma khafiya wa latufa fi sababihi. That which is hidden and subtle in its causes. And the word sihr then was used in different ways as a derivative for other words like sahar or suhoor, referring to the time where you're eating before fajr secretly, or the early morning, وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ, the early mornings. But Shaykh says here then, because sihr is difficult to understand or to see or to recognize, everything that was considered hidden and difficult to understand was claimed to be sihr. Such that Fakhr ad-Din al-Razi, he considered watches amongst the form of sihr, which in the past were something just of devices. What about the electronic watches of nowadays? It means that the timepiece, the way it works, subtle in its causes, means behind a watch, underneath is the quartz of the machine. Some mashaykh they argue that is even sihr, but obviously it's not in the technical sense. Linguistically, you might say yes, the subtle cause of the way the watch is moving, maybe this is what he's intending, but in terms of technically, no. So the first hadith Shaykh al-Islam he brings is a hadith from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, where he said Muhammad bin Ja'far narrated to us, the Auf reported to us on the authority of Hayyan bin A'la, who said Qattan bin Qubaysa narrated to us from his father that he heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, verily making birds fly to seek omen, drawing lines on the earth to predict events, and evil omens are all from sorcery. This hadith is reported by Imam Ahmed and others. And it is a weak hadith. So we should take note of it. Hadith is da'if. Even though Shaykh al-Islam, he mentions here, its chain is jayyid, it's good. Our contemporary scholars, they weaken the hadith. So the hadith is actually not authentic, despite some of that which is mentioned here has been authentic in other ways. For example, he's talking about here at-tiyara, and we have birds flying in one direction or another to predict events. It's been authentic in other hadith. But as a full hadith, the hadith is da'if. Nonetheless, there are some benefits we can derive from it. So some of the benefits we want to take from it is what the Shaykh is mentioning as some of the types of magic. Because here Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is clarifying some types of magic. So one of them we see, which we want to talk about, is taraq. So the hadith says here, it begins, in al-iyafa, driving the birds, and in taraq. And taraq, it translates to mean drawing lines on the ground to predict future events. Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, he says, rahimahullah, the Auf, he interpreted, the narrator here interpreted the word taraq to mean lines drawn on the ground, like ones on the roads, on earth, which people, they walk on, means the pathways. And the meaning of drawing lines on the ground is well known among them. And they made them on the sand by way of making sorcery and fortune telling. So taraq was a practice in the previous generations, that people would draw lines on the ground, and through these lines try to predict future events. And this kind of practice, obviously, was done by people who are fortune tellers or magicians. And the Shaykh said, the women did it in most cases. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions here that this is a type of magic. Even though the hadith is da'if, there's another hadith Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. There was actually a prophet from the prophets before us who used to do this. And the Shaykh said, explain, what does it mean? Is this actually something prohibited or not? He said, as authentically reported from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that one of the prophets used to draw lines, and he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, whoever concurs with his lines, then there is no blame. So this hadith is a hadith in Muslim from Muawiyah bin Hakam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that he said, Ya Rasulullah, فقلت, I said to him, Ya Rasulullah, وَمِنَّا رِجَالٌ يَخُطُّونَ, there are some men amongst us, يَخُطُّونَ, they draw lines on the ground. Again, trying to predict the future. So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, كان النبي من الأنبياء, there was a prophet from the prophets before us, يخط, he used to do this. فَمَنْ وَافَقَ خَطُّهُ فَذَاكَ, whoever's drawing of lines concurs to his, then it's allowed for him. Hadith is Muslim and Abu Dawud and others, authentic. So here the question now arises, is this practice actually magic? And if yes, how come a prophet from the prophets before us was doing this? Because this became an issue of contention for some people, and there's a khilafat amongst the ulama in terms of the interpretation. What does it mean? A prophet from the past was doing this. So Shaykh Uthaymeen, he mentions there's two answers that can be given. The first, the prophet before, which the Rasul is talking about here, he's doing something which the Messenger said, if you concur with his lines, then there's no blame on you. So how do we know that if you were to do this, that you can concur to his lines or not? This is impossible for me and you to do this today and say, what I'm drawing on the floor today is like the way of the Prophet before us. So in reality, when the Prophet is saying at the end of the hadith, it's not an allowance, but it's only if you're certain that you're actually doing what the Prophet did. And you will never be certain. Secondly, that Prophet has wahi bin Allah. So what he's doing, in terms of drawing and then trying to, or using that to learn what will happen in the future, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him revelation. As for me and you, we don't have that. The second interpretation is, if the drawing is through divine revelation from Allah, as is the case with all prophets, then there's no blame because Allah gives him a sign which came in revelations known to him. So the second way of looking at it is, for a prophet to do this, it's okay because Allah gives him wahi. That's one of the special characteristics of prophets. They get revelation from Allah. As for me and you, we can't do this practice. For we can never really be certain we're practicing what he practiced, nor do we have wahi. To add to this, if you go to the explanation of Sahih al-Muslim, Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, he explains this. He says the meaning is, the correct meaning, for Sahih he says, the correct meaning to this hadith is that whoever is in agreement with this, then it's allowed for him. And that means that we will never know for us, for certain, with certain knowledge that we are in concurrence to what the Prophet did. So in reality it's haram. And the conclusion the Shaykh says, we after mentioning many opinions, the conclusion it says, is of all the statements of the ulama, is that they're in agreement that it's prohibited to practice this nowadays. Why? Because you can never really be certain. Whatever lines you're drawing is what he used to draw, nor do you have revelation from Allah to say. And if you remember our lessons from Masail al-Jahiliyyah, the aspects of days of ignorance, Shaykh al-Islam, he mentions there as well, that from the aspects of days of ignorance is this practice. The people used to do this, and that's why Rasulullah addressed the issue, because people, like Muawiyah was saying, that some people are doing this. It was known in the past. Even if you look inside some Western literature, you find that, you see practices of people. Certain sources drawing circles or things on the ground, and they're using that to predict certain things. So the takeaway from this hadith is, the practice of tarq is a type of magic. As for what the hadith is talking about, then that's special for the Prophet, and a Prophet from before us. As for us, we can't practice it. I hope it becomes clear. It's not allowed for us to do that, for we can never be certain that we can ever are in accordance to his way. The second type he mentions in the hadith is tiyara, which is evil omens. It's a part of sorcery. And we know the hadith Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, at-tiyaratu shirk, فقالوا ثلاثا. Rasulullah said it 3 times. الطيرة شرك, الطيرة شرك, الطيرة شرك. So what is a tiyara? It is when you have an evil omen, or you believe in evil omens, whether it be something you see or heard. It's also refers to taking evil omen from something that is known, whether that be something that can be seen or heard, or a place or a period of time. And it's more encompassing. So the practice in the past of tiyara comes from the word tayr, birds, or bird. And the Arabs, they used to practice it with the birds in that they used to attach meaning to the flight of the birds. If the birds flew in that direction, it means we shouldn't go out for a travel. If they go in that direction, it's clear to go. So this practice of using the birds is considered tiyara. But it is attached not just to the birds, but all things where you do this. Evil omens. So for some examples, it could be time, places, people. And it's haram in Islam to believe in them. To believe in them. Right? Today sometimes you also refer to as superstitions. So for example, someone may say that if you see an owl on this occasion, someone's going to die in your family. Some of our countries is like this. And some people, they think this. Or if you go and you get married in this month, bad state. If you go to that place, something's going to happen to you. It's haram to believe in this. Because it's all in our hearts and chests. Now the hadith Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, he explained to Rasulullah, some of us, we do the tiyara. This is new Muslims, the people practicing from before. So Rasulullah said that's something that you do know fi sudurihim. They find that in their heart. Something that they come up with. And actually you see it's true. People who believe in evil omens, most of the times they're looking for it and they think they found something. But those who don't believe in it, they're never affected by it because they don't believe in it, nor do they look for it. And nor are they affected by it. But those people who are like this, superstitious, no matter what occurs, they're looking for something, they'll create it and say, there, I can't do this because something has happened. So it's in their heart and their chest as a false belief, and then they act upon it. In Islam, we're not allowed to believe in that. Because nothing affects or brings about good or evil except by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nothing's allowed to believe can bring about good and evil except what the Sharia has allowed and legislated, or reality. So Shaykh says here are some examples. He said when a person begins to take evil omens in his affairs, the world becomes difficult for him, and he begins to consider everything as an evil omen. So much so that there are some people amongst us, or amongst the people, who, if he wakes up and goes out of his house and a man with one eye meets him, he regards it as an evil omen and says today is a bad day. And so he'll close his store and he will neither buy nor sell. And the refuge is sought in Allah. Allah musta'an. Some of them used to take bad omens on Wednesdays and say it's a day of misfortune, evil. And some of them do not take evil omen with the month of Shawwal. Or some of them take an evil omen in the month of Shawwal, like this month we're in now. especially with respect to marriage. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha has refuted this omen when he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tied, means he contracted the marriage in the month of Shawwal, and he also consummated the marriage in the month of Shawwal. So she would say, who among you is more honored in his sight than me? And there's nobody, right? So this hadith is also proof in Muslim that from the people who intend to get married, it's recommended to get married in the month of Shawwal. This is dalil. And also it's proof as well that there's no omen in the month of Shawwal or Wednesdays or anything else. For us, Friday the 13th, in our countries we believe this is tiyarah. If you believe the 13th is a bad or unlucky number, or Friday the 30th, such and such will happen, this is tiyarah. And tiyarah to shirku. I'm not allowed to believe in shirk. So very important we take from this type of sorcery, or this type of shirk. Moving along, Shaykh al-Islam mentioned the issue of jibt, and we mentioned before that some people before us, Bani Israel, yu'minuna bil-jibti wa taghut. Allah says they believe in jibt and taghut. And we said the word taghut and jibt here are in relation to evil, they can be related to magic, and it's more general than that. Some of the Salaf, like Hassan al-Basri and others, will interpret the word jibt to mean the devil's scream. And there are actually authentic narrations. But we also said it can be general, more general than that. Evil and magic, all that is included in the meaning of jibt and taghut. So that's the first hadith. Despite its weakness, there are some benefits we've taken because some of these forms of magic like taraq and tiyara have been authenticated otherwise. The second hadith Shaykh al-Islam mentions in this chapter is the hadith of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, who said Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, he who learns a part of astrology has acquired a part of sorcery. The more he learns, the more he acquires. Reported by Abu Dawood, and the chain is sahih. And this hadith is sahih. Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah and Allamat al-Wadi'i both of them authenticate this hadith. So this hadith here is showing us astrology. The issue of astrology is a type of magic. And we're going to explain what kind of categories of astrology are there. So this hadith is important. Rasulullah is telling us here that there's a type of magic in relation to astrology, tanjim. So here Shaykh al-Uthaymeen says the hadith begins man iqtabasa, whoever searches for or acquires shu'batan min al-nujum, a branch of knowledge in relation to astrology. Then what is it? Then is acquired فَقَدْ اِقْتَبَسَ شُعْبَةً مِنَ السِّحْرِ زَادَ مَزَادَ. Then he's actually acquired a type of magic. Whoever increases in sin and in magic. So here astrology, Shaykh says, here is star divination and not the stars themselves, because the stars cannot be taken and studied. So what is intended here by astrology, it means you're using this to deduce what will happen on the earth, earthly occurrences. So you're studying the stars, the nujum, to learn the occurrences of the earth, what will occur in the future. This is what is meant by ilm al-nujum, the sciences of astrology. And it says here, they would also deduce that from a person who was born in this star, like horoscopes, then he is successful, or this one is wretched, if he was born in another. All of this deduction is of this type. And of course it's not Islamic. Consequently, it is reported from the hadith of Zayd bin Khalid al-Juhani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in the battle of Hudaybiyah. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, or led us in prayer, one night after it rained. And he said, Allah the Exalted said, some of my slaves wake up this morning believing in me, and others disbelieving. Whoever says we've been granted rain due to the star such and such, then he has disbelieved in me and has believed in the stars. So using the stars and the movements of the stars to predict the future occurrences, whether it be in this case attributing that to the rain. من قال, whoever says مطرنا بنوء كذا وكذا فقد هو كافر بي ومؤمن بكوكب. Whoever says it's rain due to the star such and such, or constellation such and such, then he has disbelieved in me and believed in this star, or that he's He's saying it. However, whoever says مُطِرْنَا بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ بِي وَكَافِرٌ بِالْكَوْكَبِ. Whoever says Allah has been rained, we have been rained upon due to Allah's favor and mercy, and that is a believer in me and disbeliever in the stars. So this is an example of astrology. You see the stars movement, you say, okay, it's rained because of this. These movements of the stars, they have no effect in terms of bringing harm or good. We should know that. The same with the birds. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring the good and harm. So here the Shaykh says, stars do not bring rain, nor do they bring wind. From this we point out the mistake of the common folk who say that when the wind blows, that so-and-so star has appeared. And this is because the stars have no influence over the wind. Given that during some periods and seasons, there will be wind and rain, whether or not there's a star out there. So we benefit from this, so we need to be aware of astrology. However, Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen divides into two categories. There's one type of astrology or a study of science which is permissible, study of stars which is permissible, and there's one type which is impermissible. The one that's impermissible, ilmul ta'thir. He calls it ilmul ta'thir. So the study of the science of astrology, believing in the earthly effect of these phenomena, of these stars, based on the orbits and their changes. Ilmu ta'thir. You believe that the change in stars have ta'thir in ard. They affect the earth. This is haram. This is the one that Rasulullah is saying, shu'batan min al-nujum, min al-sihr. It's a type of magic. This is the one that Rasulullah criticized as disbeliever. Ilmu ta'thir. So you study it to say, okay, well, so-and-so was born this month, or that constellation, this star appeared here, so this will happen. And this is because Rasulullah dispelled this idea a long time ago. One day there was an eclipse, the time of Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the people began saying that the eclipse was due to such and such. In this case, it was during the time of the death of his son Ibrahim, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So some people were seeing the sun and the moon eclipsed on the occasion of the death of the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, this is wrong. So Rasulullah corrected them and said, إِنَّ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرِ, bear the sun and the moon, آيَتَانِ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ. They are two signs from the signs of Allah. لَا يَنْكَسِفَانِ لِمَوْتِ أَحَدٍ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يُخَوِّفُ بِهَا عِبَادُهُ. They don't eclipse due to the death of anybody. However, they are assigned to frighten His servants. So we know when the sun and the moon eclipse, we have Salatul Kusuf, and we're in a fearful state because it's a sign of Allah. And we know Yawm al-Qiyam, once the sun and the moon, khasaf al-qamar, right? When it talks about the eclipse, or the sun coming eclipsed. So this is a sign of Allah to scare us. It's not a time to say that because of this occurrence somebody has died, or so as occurrence due to this. No, Muslims rejected that. So therefore, this idea of ilmu ta'thir, this type of sihr, astrologists or fortune tellers that use this type of science, and attached to its horoscopes, which the ulama also say is prohibited in Islam due to the same type. It is from this type of astrology. The second type, which is permissible, the first one is impermissible, the second type is permissible, is ilmu tasyir. Ilm at-tasyir, the science of navigation by way of the stars. So to navigate, for especially those who are on the sea, or if you're walking or you're traveling, you use them to navigate. Are you going north? Are you going east? I guess to find the qibla, the ulama permitted this. Ilm tasyir, sayr, to travel on the earth and like this. So this is permissible, to know direction at times. With that being said, it shouldn't be that somebody obviously used this permissibility to get into excessive study of the stars. Well, there's only so much you need to know if you are facing north and the qibla is here. You don't need to be an expert in it. But Allah permitted us that. In the Quran, Allah talks about وَعَلَامَاتٍ وَبِالنَّجْمِ هُمْ يَهْتَدُونَ. Allah says the alamat, He's giving you landmarks on the earth. وَبِالنَّجْمِ, with the stars, you guide yourself. You are guided. It means we know you can use it to guide yourself which direction you're going. Sailors, they use it. This is permissible. And the Salaf al-Salih, the pious predecessors, allow this. Shaykh says you can also do this, or use this to know what time will be a flood, what season, or what time spring is coming, or what direction is the qibla, like this. However, this should obviously be with some type of limit, not excessive. For someone who studies excessively, he will also misguide himself, and perhaps even may lead to believing in more than is necessary. So, if somebody uses the stars and landmarks to guide himself, it's jaiz, permissible. So it's a type of astrology which is permissible, because you're not attaching any ta'thir, any effect or earthly effect to these stars. You're not saying that because of this occurrence of this star, that's going to happen. No. Some of the Salaf also rejected the idea of using them to find the Qibla. And if someone may go excessive in this. And I want to read a benefit then. The Hafid Ibn Rajab, he mentions in his Kitab, فضل علم السلف على علم الخلف. I recommend all the brothers to read this book. Mufid jiddan, very beneficial in this chapter. It's in translated in English too, if someone wants to read it. Excellence of the knowledge of the Salaf over the knowledge of the Khalaf. Amazing book, very important. Read this book, very beneficial. In there, Ibn Hafid Ibn Rajab rahimahullah discusses what is ilm nafi', what's the knowledge of Salaf al-Salih they had, which kind of ilm is batil, which is haram, and which has no benefit. And he also teaches you how the Salaf al-Salih dealt with certain issues regarding knowledge, and how, for us, if we wish to be like them, and to be guided like them, that the knowledge that they have is the one that we need to have. It's a very powerful book, very short book. In there he says, as for learning such knowledge as would allow one to navigate through the earth, know the direction of the Qibla, and know the routes leading to various places, then this is permissible. In the view of the majority of the scholars, there is no need to learn any more of this science than this amount, and to do so would lead someone to be preoccupied with learning or away from that which is more important. And it's possible that studying this science in minute detail will lead one to start doubting the direction of the Qibla that has been set up by the Muslims in their lands. Indeed, this has actually happened to many astrologers, past and present. In the footnote, they mentioned Ibn Qudama and Mughni, he mentions this. Some of the astrologers, they went so much into this, they became doubtful about the Qibla. A'udhu billah, right? The Muslim praying on Qibla and you think everybody's praying wrong. And he keeps going, it even may lead you to believe that the Salaf are praying the wrong direction. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Right? It's possible. Some may think that he found the correct direction. Until the end of the statement, and it's on page 30 of the English translation. So this book, Sheikh's telling us what kind of knowledge is beneficial. Some of the Salaf, they said, like Imam Ahmad, there's no benefit in going too much. Especially for the Qibla even. Because how does Rasulullah tell us to find the Qibla? مَا بَيْنَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ قِبْلَةٌ. He said, what's between the east and west is the Qibla? Ahl al-Mashriq, Ahl al-Maghrib, Mashriq, those who live in the east. For us, what's between the north and the south? Al-Salam is Qibla. And then we use our other technology today to find it, whether it be Google or the compass, like this. And we don't need to go so much. That we try to find the Qibla to the 100th degree, because then we start doubting everybody. In fact, sometimes we may find people, that's the number one concern. We're so preoccupied fixing the Qibla, forgetting that, we're not creating unity. Because when they pray this way, you pray that way. And every time they're trying to correct it. And it's not that beneficial, as long as you're within the correct direction and the way that Rasulullah taught us to do this. But this type of science is allowed. It's important, this is allowed. As for the other one, then it's haram, because it's type of magic. The next hadith then is what Shaykh al-Islam brings from the hadith reported by Nasa'i from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever ties a knot and blows into it has made sorcery. And whoever does sorcery has committed shirk. And whoever relies on a thing, then he has been put under its control. This hadith, again, has been weakened by Allamat al-Albani, rahimahullah. And some scholars, they weaken the entire hadith. However, Shaykh al-Albani, he strengthens the last part. Man ta'allaqa shay'an wukila ilayhi. Whoever attaches himself to something, then he will be left with, or being under his control. He authenticates this last wording. As for the beginning, then it's not authentic, and some have weakened the entire hadith. Nonetheless, we do know that blowing on knots is a type of magic. And we mentioned that's what the magicians have done. As in Surah Al-Falaq, what do we seek refuge from? وَمِن شَرِّ نَفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. We seek refuge in Allah from those people, the sorcerers, or female sorcerers, who are making nafathat. They're blowing upon the uqad, the knots. And this is something that's well known amongst the magicians. And the nafath that's mentioned here, is blowing with a little bit of saliva. And how it works, the Shaykh says, the person he blows with this type of saliva, and of course, some ulama add to this, بِالنَّفْسِ الْخَبِيثَةِ, with an evil soul. And they blow with them with hate, with evil within themselves as they blow on these knots and they read the incantation that they read. And they do spells like this. So, blowing is to make sorcery is sometimes done for sarf and sometimes otherwise. Sarf means diversion, trying to split two people apart. Husband and wife, for example. Since that she doesn't want to approach him anymore, or if he's married to her, he doesn't want to approach her anymore because of this. Even though the hadith is weak, we know we have a shahid in the Quran, this kind of sihr is sihr. And then, the Rasul said, whoever does this, فَقَدْ سَحَرْ, he has done sihr. وَمَنْ سَحَرَ فَقَدْ أَشْرَكْ. Whoever does sihr has done shirk. So despite the hadith being weak, the first part, we do know that it is something which is the magicians, they do, they practice this. And then he mentions Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen in commenting the last part of the hadith, مَنْ تَعَلَّقَ شَيْئًا, whoever attaches or connects himself to something, فَقَدْ وُكِلَ إِلَيْهِ. So it means here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leave him and abandon him to that which he has entrusted himself with. And the relevance of this sentence to the previous one is that whoever blows in the knots wants to employ this to achieve his needs and his goals, so he becomes subjected to the forbidden thing. And from another angle, it could be said, there are among people those who know when they are bewitched through blowing the knots, who resort to sorcerers and they rely upon them. And they will go to the readers, nor seek permissive medicines, nor do ruqya, etc. But Allah teaches us, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ. And whoever puts his trust to Allah and in Allah, then he will suffice him, and verily Allah will accomplish his purpose. So fa'idah from that hadith, we can only put i'timad and trust in Allah, tawakkul ala Allah. We're not allowed to have trust, or tying our trust to amulets, or strings, or whatever it may be. And this is not Islam. Islam teaches us to put tawakkul ala Allah. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْعَزِيزِ الرَّحِيمِ. Put your trust in Al-Aziz, the Almighty, the All-Merciful. So, added to this is the use of the talismans, the amulets. And we know this. مَنْ تَعَلَّقَ تَمِيمَةً فَقَدْ أَشْرَكَ. Comes another authentic hadith, whoever attaches an amulet or talisman to themselves, فَقَدْ أَشْرَكَ, they committed shirk. And from that angle, they have entrusted themselves to it, and they will not be able to benefit. And the Shaykh then brings the statement, وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ. Allah says, وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّنْ يَدْعُو مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ مَنْ لَا يَسْتَجِيبَ لَهُ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. And who is more astray than the one who calls and invokes someone besides Allah, such as will not answer him on a day until a day of judgment. So in reality, this is a proof that the person who attaches himself to these things, really these things cannot benefit them, nor do they know that they are even being relied upon. The next hadith he brings, Shaykh al-Islam brings, is the hadith Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. That Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, listen, should I tell you what al-adh or adha is? He said, it is rumors or tale carrying, going about with rumors amongst the people. So here, al-adh, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is talking about namimah, tale carrying, gossiping. And then another hadith comes after, this hadith is Muslim. The next hadith is hadith Ibn Umar, where Allah's Messenger said, certainly some eloquence constitutes or is sorcery. So the first thing we want to know, how come this chapter of magic there's a hadith about gossiping? What is the correlation between the two? And this is of great benefit because when you look at it outwardly, you may not see the benefit, but when you look at it carefully, you see there is a benefit. And so here, namima, we know, is the rumor mongering or tale carrying or gossiping. And it is a major sin. But here, the person who carries rumors or tale carries, they usually separate and split people. For example, they go to you and say, you know what, so-and-so said this about you. And you would find out and you get angry with them and you don't want to be friends with them. Lying or not lying? So the Shaykh says here, this kind of action is very important. We know that firstly it's a major sin. And secondly, if it's just telling the truth, for example, so-and-so badmouthed you, this is namima. If someone lied upon you and carried that to someone else, it's buhtan and namima. It's both slander and tail carrying. So to lie is worse, but just to tell the truth is still tail carrying. Not allowed in Islam. And why? Because it creates a discord and it creates division. وَلَكِنْ تَحْرِشْ بَيْنَهُمْ Rasulullah told us at the end of time, Shaitan will work hard to create discord amongst the people. And namima is one of them, right? To create discord. You go and say so-and-so said this about you, and everything you hear from him, and then he goes and he harbors hate or and enmity towards you, and they separate. So because of this ability for the magician, the gossip or tail carrier to separate amongst people, some of the ulama say it resembles the same way the magician separates between the husband and wife, between the friends. And it's authentically reported that the Salaf Imam Yahya bin Abi Kathir rahimahullah said, يفسد النمام والكذاب في الساعة ما لا يفسد الساحر في الشهر وفي الرواية في السنة. Very important statement. That the namam, the tail carrier, is able to corrupt, and the liar likewise is able to corrupt in 1 hour what the magician cannot corrupt in an entire month. It means the kind of corruption they can make. The tail carrier and the liar can cause corruption in 1 hour, that which a magician cannot cause a corruption in a whole month. Shaykh Muhammad bin Salih, he mentioned the hadith narration, Isnaduhu Hasan. It's Hasan. Reported by Abu Nu'aym in Hilyat Awliya. So it's a fa'idah then. That's where the resemblance comes. Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen says that if you do remember, from the types of magic that we found in the Quran, the Harut and Marut were doing, فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. And some of the magic that we're doing was that which separates a husband from a wife. So the magician does this. What does the tail carrier do? Shaykh says they're going to your friends insulting you, and their friendship turns to enmity and separation. Same. From that angle, they're resembling the magician. That's what ulama says. This is what they meant, and this is where this chapter is related to magic. Some said even that tail carrying is a type of magic, because again, what he can do, he can cause so much corruption. And what we also benefit from that is that that's the type of magic we learn called sarf. Shaykh al-Islam, what does he say in Nawaqid al-Islam? When he talks about the sihr, وَمِنْهُ الصَّرْفُ وَالْعَاطِفُ. Family is sarf and atif. Sarf is the one separating two people. Atif is joining two people. They don't love each other and use some potion and magic. They love each other. So this is disbelief. So what we benefit from this is that the magician has been used as a resemblance for the tail carrier. Tail carrying is that of major sin. Shaykh brings another ayah to show it's a major sin. وَلَا تُطِعْ كُلَّ حَلَّافٍ مَهِينٍ هَمَّازٍ مَشَّاءٍ بِنَمِيمٍ. Allah says, O Muhammad, do not obey everyone who's a halaf al-maheen, who swears much and is a liar or is worthless, a slanderer going about with stories and tales and carrying them. And the Shaykh brings another hadith to prove that's a major sin. Hadith Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, marra an-Nabiy sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mi qabaran. Rasulullah one day passed by two graves and he explained the situation. And that yu'adhiban, they're being punished. Amma ahaduhuma kana yamshi bin namima. So one of them, he used to go about tail carrying. So we got to be careful ourselves nowadays that we're not people like that. On our phones, we're passing messages, so-and-so said this about you, and then this and this, and then create discord. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا فَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُم. Allah says, don't divide and have enmity and discord, lest you lose your strength. The Muslim divides, become weakened. But we don't want people carrying tail. If someone says something bad about someone else, we should, first of all, advise the person not to speak bad of others. And secondly, we should not carry that news to somebody else. Unless, of course, the affair is something of severity, so that somebody can respond to that. Now, perhaps somebody may say something and it's severe, and the person needs to know that this kind of rumor is there, and he may want to clarify. But just you go around and say, so-and-so went there, he did this, and this is something that is dangerous. So as Muslims, we got to be aware of that. And also we benefit from this, that in society, tail-bearing, Shaykh says, causes a corruption in society. An enmity between two friends. And so we should be wary of it, and we should advise people about that. But tail carrying And someone has said, would mention the one who carries news and stories and things about others to you, the same person who's going to carry news and stories and talk against you. So you can never trust this kind of namam. لا يدخل الجنة النمام. حديث صحيح. The namam went into Jannah. Means this punishment, a threat on them, the one who's a tail carrier. That means you want to Jannah means is threat to punishment for such a person because it's a major sin. So we need to be aware ourselves of such things. An interesting question, the Shaykh Allama Abdul Abbad, Hafidhullah, that there's a man at work who reports everything to the supervisor. Everything we say, whether it's work or not work. And it says, Shaykh, is this person considered from Namima? And Shaykh said, Bila shak. No doubt this is from Namima. He reports everything. Work and not work related, this is tail carrying. However, if this person is just narrating to the mudir, the supervisor or the manager, that which is related to work, because he's entrusted to do that, to make sure the work is getting done and people are doing, this is fine. But just everything is not allowed. So it's a benefit as well. When we go to work, we don't be one of those people. We go in there talking to everybody and we're passing news to everybody. And we know that at work, this stuff happens. So we be aware of it. But we benefit from this angle, how they're connected. So we don't want to create disunity in Islam and discord between the Muslims. We should try to cause harmony. وَأَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ. We're supposed to, as Allah orders us, to make resolve between and resolve the issues amongst us. And Shaykh gives some of the examples of ways that discord and separation are created. Rasulullah prohibited no one should outbid his brother. وَلَا يُبِيعُ بَعْضُهُمْ بَيْعُ بَعْضٍ. If one brother is doing business with somebody else and is giving him a proposal for a particular price for a product, I can't come and outbid him and say, I'll give you less than that. I know they're doing business, I can't come and just try to undercut them. Not allowed. Again, discord, disunity. Or someone proposed to a woman and you know that, and as your brother, you can't come and propose at the same time. You have to wait for his permission or his rejection. One of the two. You can't come and so-and-so propose, so-and-so, you know that you go and propose as well. Not allowed in Islam. Again, not to create discord and enmity. So Islam protects us against that. The last part of this chapter deals with eloquence, bayan. Rasulullah said, Inna min al-bayani la-sihran. Verily from eloquence, there is a type of magic. So what does it mean here? Is eloquence and speaking well magic? So Shaykh says here, inna here is a particle of emphasis. And the word min here means ba'd. It's partitive, means some, not all. And what's intended here obviously is that the eloquence that constitutes magic or sorcery, while some of it is not magic and sorcery. And so the ulama, when they describe this hadith or discuss it, they differ in terms of what exactly does it mean. And the conclusion was that there is from bayan, eloquence, that which is mahmud and that which is mazmum. That which is praiseworthy and that which is blameworthy. So some of the ulama say that which is praiseworthy eloquence is the type of eloquence you have when you're supporting the truth and you're clarifying your issue or the matter. And this is recommended. Well, the Prophet's messenger was sent to clarify the people. And they were sent with bayan and fasaha, can have this kind of being people who are eloquent. Story of Musa and Harun. When Allah chose Musa as a prophet, He asked Allah to choose Harun. Why? Huwa afsahu minni. He's more eloquent than me. It's wadah. He didn't say first more than that, this. And of course, this is his brother, he can aid me. So this is important. Nothing wrong if you're going to use your eloquence to support the truth. But the second type is the one that's batil, or haram, or dispraise, is the one where you're using it to misguide the people. You're using it to beautify falsehood. Eloquence is used such that when somebody speaks, he mesmerizes everybody. And the people are overcome by his speech. And such that the people follow this person even though they might be totally misguided. So the ulama in the end, they described it this way. Not that it's categorically prohibited. The Shaykh said, Allah says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ. Allah created mankind and He taught them eloquent speech. So how could it be prohibited in get-go? Allah tells us from the signs of the blessings of Allah, عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ. He taught us the bayan. Clarity, having eloquence. And so the eloquence that constitutes magic is that which mesmerizing the people, supporting falsehood, and which affects the listeners, and they may think that the person is saying truth, even though he's saying baseless falsehood. And we also need to benefit from this, that sometimes people are like this. The Shaykh gives the example of the time of Rasulullah, as the hadith was mentioned, the prior, where the context was, One person, he spoke and he made some speech, and the speech was rhyming in such a way which was beautiful in its construction, and they mentioned this part of the hadith. And there are some people like this. When they speak, it's like sorcery over the people. People listen to everything they say. And so in reality, the hadith is not prohibiting eloquence, or it's talking about the one that's used in the wrong way that hinders the people, and it's not for truth. And also, we need to be wary that some people have eloquent speech. It does not necessitate that they're upon guidance. You have to be wary of that. Just because someone's eloquent doesn't mean they're upon haqq. Rather, we should look at that which they're saying. For we know Musa alayhi salam, he had the stutter in his tongue. And Fir'aun tried to use that against the people. وَلَا يَكَادُ يُبِينُ. He's not even clear in speech, he said. And Musa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Musa the ability to clarify the truth. And came with ayat. And came with haqq. And he clarified the truth to the people. And so that is not a proof against anybody. The same if someone's eloquent, or they're saying falsehood, we don't say they're upon truth. We need to be wary. وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْبَيَانِ لِلسِّحْرَانِ. And that's why we may find, unfortunately, people who are following innovation, that they have many people who are following them. لِكُلِّ سَاقِطٌ لَاقِطٌ. The Arab, they say, for everyone who speaks has followers. So we should not be a fool that somebody has followers. Everyone has followers. What does Rasulullah say about such people when they speak? Especially today, eloquent in their speech, or false thereupon. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that at the end of times, يكون وتكون دعاة على أبواب جهنم من أجابهم إليها قذفوه فيها. There will be at the end of time people who are callers to the gates of the hellfire. Whoever obeys them in it, they will all fall into it. It's important. So I'm telling about that. Du'at, su, people of innovation. Remember we said this is the Murji'ah, the Khawarij, Qadariyah, Qaramita. This is what they are. People of bid'ah. Such that you may find them on YouTube or other places. وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْبَيَانِ السِّحْرًا. Say subhanallah. Whatever they speak about, mashallah. Sound amazing. But if we actually think about it and measure the statements ala Kitab and Sunnah, say it's batil what they said. And that's why as Muslims when we're listening, we should be wary of just judge the people based on their speech alone. Judge them based on what they're saying. And also to make sure that if we're not certain, that we ask somebody or people of knowledge, so they can clarify this is correct. Because sometimes we leave it to our own selves, we don't know any better. And how many people they're overtaken by somebody's speech, like we said, more than their content. The chapter ends with this much. Inshallah, if anybody, or any brothers have questions or something you want to add, inshallah, let me do so.
A lot of video games nowadays, they have a lot of magic and shirk in them. So, if somebody believes that it is okay to play these games, does that fall under udwan or shirk?
Well, when it comes to video games or TV shows and films and things that have magic, we said last week, the ulama, they didn't permit us to watch shows or movies that have magic in them. And Shaykh Salih Fawzan, they asked him particularly the question about the qanawat, the satellite shows that have either magic, or they may have you, a magician there, you call in and you ask him. So generally he said no. If you believe in what they're saying, you believe this permissible, this is different. It's interesting, this is disbelief. But if you're just watching it, you know it's wrong. This person under threat of the prayer not being accepted, and also the fact that this person now he put himself in danger. So we're not going to say that for the video games, somebody who's playing is disbelief. We're not saying this. We're saying that when you see magic things there, what is a Muslim supposed to do? You're supposed to turn away from those things. You're not supposed to witness evil and be okay with it. Anytime there's something haram, any place or anywhere, what we should do? وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَشْهَدُونَ الزُّورِ. Allah describes the believers, they don't witness evil. إِذَا مَرُّوا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا. When they pass by this wickedness, they pass by honorably. So such a person, we advise them, brother, is this something that which you have any proof to say this is permissible? And obviously the particular question should be taken directly to ulama in terms of fatwa, if you want to say particularly. We ask them, what is the benefit? You know there's magic in there, how can you justify and say, it's just a game? So we say this is very dangerous, and more than that, it's also showing that the person should not be so negligent, such that they admit there is magic there, but it's a game. وَالَّذِينَ يَشْهَدُونَ الزُّورَ. Believers should not witness evil, and we should also advise the people that they be wary of that, what they're watching. So this is important, and we advise that person that. But in terms of the ruling, we should raise such a particular question to ulama, see whether they can give us particular fatwa in terms of the particular action. Allahu a'lam.
When we were speaking about astrology, for at-Tasir, is there any time where it's not permissible, or is it always when you're using it like a sense of direction?
It's mainly intends for knowing the qibla, the direction, the time. So obviously, we said if it's excessive, it's not beneficial anymore. And also, it can create to the point where you get into doubts. So, for example, you study this such that so doubt in the Muslims, or it leads the pathway to the other knowledge. So you started studying so much that you move over to study now its effects.
So would you say it's only for like necessity?
It is, of course, when there is a benefit for it. And today we have compasses, and we have our GPS, and we have things that Alhamdulillah Allah suffices with that we can use. So obviously that type of science should be used when it's needed. But again, people should also be wary that they don't waste their time. So for example, if we're never going to really need this, because for example, we rely upon our phones or technology to find the qibla, then there's no need for us to study in great detail that. But obviously if somebody needs to know it or wishes to know it, it's not haram to know that much which is needed. Because again, the priority of knowledge is something that's permissible knowledge. The priority is that you study it, but it should not come before or take precedence over the obligatory knowledge. Always you put priority obligatory knowledge before that which is permissible.
What was the duration between the initiation of the marriage of Aisha Rasul and its contribution?
The ulama mentioned, or the hadith specifically in Bukhari and Muslim, Aisha, she narrates herself in Muslim that she got married to Rasul at the age of 6 and she consummated the marriage at 9. It's the 3 years time period. But it was both in Shawwal. So the benefit of the ulama taking that is that Rasul did this to dispel the idea Shawwal was a month of evil omen. So today's time we take also benefit. The shurah of the hadith says recommendation to get married in Shawwal. Someone who's intending it. But that's the duration.
Also, when the Prophet his son passed away, and there was an eclipse, is that a Tawheed? Was that considered that when people said,
the people, yes, that when the sun eclipsed the moon and the death of Ibrahim, the people believed that was due to the death of his son. So that idea that this eclipsing has an effect on the action of the earth, or that it happens to the earth, the Prophet then said the statement that these things are signs of Allah, they don't get eclipsed from anybody's death. He clarified it. So because the idea of the fact that this could have ta'fir in the ard was in the minds of some of the Sahaba. So Prophet corrected it. So that's an example as well. For example, such a movement will say, oh, such and such is going to occur now because this star has gone up here or this thing has gone over there. No, this is not how it works. For no one knows. La ya'lamu al-ghayb illa Allah. And this is important. The ghayb, we leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't know it. So the people, when they do this stuff or they think this is incorrect. Because again, how do we know that the eclipse is for this or for that? We wouldn't know. And something tell us what the reason behind it is. يُخَوِّفُ بِهَا عِبَادُهُ. Allah scares the servants by it. So that's why there's faza', there's worry during time of eclipse and hastening to salah, to pray and give sadaqah and free the slaves, and because we're worried if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punish us. Or the sun, or the moon, they don't except bring punishment. So that's but that's what it is. That idea was somewhat of ta'fir, but Rasul corrected. Any other questions? طيب سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.